Thanksgiving is finally here, so it's time to get together with friends, family, enjoy some good food, and of course, some good apple cider. Today's recipe is a riff on a classic spiced apple cider, but to make it a little bit more interesting, we're going to be attempting to make it similar to an apple pie a la mode. That is, an apple pie that has been topped with a scoop of vanilla ice cream. To accomplish this, we're going to be using an uncommon ingredient in cider making, flaked oats. Flaked oats should add an extra creaminess to the cider, increase head retention, and also improve the body of the cider to make it more full-bodied feeling. That combined with vanilla extract, some roasted apples, and a blend of spices should bring this all together to make a nice, decadent cider for your Thanksgiving meal.
All right, so with this cider, we're going to be going over kind of some thought process about how we're building this recipe. And whenever we build a new recipe, I like to go over this to give people an idea of what's going through my head and whether or not it actually works out. That's part of the fun of this. So we're going to be doing a couple of things. When you think about an apple pie, you think about basically a tart apple that is caramelized, and you also think about the spices, as well as kind of what the crust adds to it. It's a kind of like a bready type of texture. In addition to that, if you have an apple pie a la mode, so with a scoop of ice cream on top of it, you have that pie has a little bit of creaminess and a little bit of vanilla presence to it. So we're going to be combining all those elements together, and we're going to be doing our, trying to get all of that out of the cider. So it actually sounds a little bit more difficult than it probably is going to end up being. So let's start with our ingredient choices. We're going to be running with 4.5 gallons of Treetop 3 Apple Blend and a half a gallon of Treetop Tart and Sweet. I actually don't really like this one this much, but I'm going to give it a try again. It is neither tart nor sweet. It is not more tart, nor is it more sweet than the 3 Apple Blend. It is just a hazy cider or a hazy juice, and that is how they are choosing to advertise this. I hope it adds a little bit of presence to it, but it needs to be clarified. That's one of the things we're going to be adding some pectic enzyme. For our baked apple edition, we have 4.5 pounds of Granny Smith apples. We're going to be slicing these up into quarters, coring them, and baking them in the oven at 375 for about 30 minutes in order to get them nice and caramelized. Maybe a little bit longer. I want the apples to be pretty firmly caramelized. And these apples are going to be a direct addition into the cider. So instead of doing something like juicing them, we're going to be basically just adding these directly into it to allow the caramelization, the caramelized sugar to extract. Caramelized sugar, generally speaking, ferments less completely than non-caramelized sugar. So we're hoping to get that from the apples, as well as get that kind of Granny Smith character out of it. So in order to get our creaminess out of this cider, we're going to be doing two things. The first thing is we're going to be mashing some flaked oats. And the second thing is we're going to be adding about 3 ounces of Madagascar bourbon vanilla. This is from Olive Nation. It is a triple fold, which means it's 3 times concentrated vanilla. I like this vanilla a lot. And I know what you might be saying right now when I just said that we're going to be mashing flaked oats and flaked oats alone. Your first couple of questions is mashing in what? And the second is probably the enzymatic content of flaked oats is basically negligible. Like it doesn't really have very many alpha amylase, beta amylase, or gamma amylase enzymes in it. This is usually used in addition to other base malts in order to get those other malts to provide the enzymes necessary to extract all the sugars or convert the starches into sugars. So I got that covered. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to use amylase enzyme. So we're going to be doing a mash with our strike water at 157 degrees. That's basically the strike water is when we're going to stop our raising the temperature, take it off of heat, and then adding in our grains, and hopefully do a mash at 152 for about 30 minutes. I'm going to be adding in probably about a tablespoon. It says 0.25 ounces per gallon per 5 gallons. I'm going to ignore that completely, and I'm just going to add a bunch because you can't go wrong when you add more amylase enzyme. We just want to get more of an extraction out of it. After that, we're going to just bring it up to 170 degrees to get it to mash out, which basically would mean try and get that last little bit of sugar conversion out of it. And then we're going to be doing a quench volume inside here with the remainder of our 5 gallons of juice. And the second question that you had was, well, I'm assuming you at home are able to answer these questions or ask these questions via the lovely magic of the internet. What are we mashing in? We're actually going to be mashing in apple juice, and this is another cardinal sin of a cider making, which is to bring apple juice up to a temperature in which the pectin will set. So we're going to be doing that today, which is going to be fun. I don't intend on making this a terribly clear cider. I'm not going to be submitting this to competition. This is just a fun cider that I like to make because it's, well, it has a nice, it has a nice spicy character, and it has something different than just a normal apple pie cider. So we're going to be using a half a gallon of Treetop 3 apple blend, and a half a gallon of, our other half a gallon is going to be our sweetened tart. We're going to be doing a mash with those two. So that's for those metric people at home, that's a total of 3.78 liters of juice that we're going to be mashing in our 5-liter pot. So hopefully we don't get any boil over. I don't anticipate it. That is the general process here. A couple of things to say. Inside primary, we're going to be doing 2 additions. We're going to be adding in, for our nutrient content, we're going to be adding in about 7.5 grams of Ferment. And we're going to be adding in a tablespoon of pectic enzyme. I know I'm not giving you exact measurements for how many grams of pectic enzyme. Not a level tablespoon, not a rounded tablespoon. You don't need to be that precise with pectic enzyme. It can, if you add too much pectic enzyme, however, it can lead to some sort of clarity issues. But since we are going to be boiling our cider, this one particularly, I want to give myself as much of an insurance policy as possible. All right, and lastly, our yeast choice today is going to be L'Allemand Belle Saison. This yeast is also a gluten-free yeast, which is good. If you hadn't gathered, the reason why I'm not using malts is because I'm trying to make this gluten-free. Some of our friends in life have gluten intolerances, and it's always nice to make something that somebody else can drink too. So we are making that with this in mind. It could have been very easy for me just to use a malted wheat of some variety, as well as some 2-row in order to add that kind of wheaty body to it. But that's not what I'm trying to do here. So I'm trying to make this gluten-free. So if you have any suggestions on gluten-free grains, I've seen something like millet and stuff like that, but our local homebrew store doesn't have it. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get this process started by bringing this up to, by cutting our apples and coring them, putting them in the oven for a bit, and also starting our mash. So let's get started.
We started out with bringing our apple juice up to strike temperature, which was 157 degrees Fahrenheit. Added in our flaked oat and amylase enzyme, and let it mash for 30 minutes at that temperature. While our oats were mashing, we went ahead and chopped and cored our apples, placed them on a baking sheet, and into the oven at 375 for 30 minutes, turning halfway through until they are fully caramelized, as shown here. Once our apples were done baking, we went ahead and added them into our 4 gallons of Treetop 3 apple blend. Then we added our Ferment, pectic enzyme, and our wort directly into our fermenter. We pitched our yeast and let this sit for about a month and a half at 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Once fermentation was complete, we went ahead and stabilized our cider with 75 parts per million potassium metabisulfate and 125 parts per million potassium sorbate. We backsweetened with a total of 1 gallon of Treetop 3 apple blend, but half of that volume, 1/2 of a gallon, was used in our spice mixture. For our spice mixture, we used 16 fluid ounces of ginger juice, 30 grams of cassia cinnamon, 50 grams of Ceylon cinnamon, 6 grams of crushed green cardamom, 30 grams of crushed nutmeg, and 3 fluid ounces of Madagascar triple-fold vanilla. It's important to note that since we are using a significant quantity of backsweetening volume, 1 gallon out of a 5-gallon batch, that we need to add additional potassium metabisulfate and potassium sorbate into our brew. This means that you need to add 75 parts per million potassium metabisulfate and 125 parts per million potassium sorbate into your backsweetening liquid. We brought the spice mixture up to a simmer and let it simmer for 30 minutes. Then we added the backsweetening liquid directly into the keg and racked on top of it. We carbonated at 38 degrees Fahrenheit to 2 atmospheres of pressure. Now it's time to taste.
All right, it is now time for the tasting of our spiced apple pie cider, which we're calling apple pie a la mode because that's what we're trying to create. We're trying to create an apple pie flavored cider that is has hints of vanilla and it's reminiscent of an apple pie topped with some nice vanilla ice cream. So let's see how we did. Let's go ahead and take a pour. So appearance-wise, we have a nice kind of light and amber-colored cider, a little bit more towards the straw end than towards the amber end. The head retention is light, nice, delicate, small bubbles of foam have kind of made their way to the surface of this cider. The appearance is a little bit on the hazy side. You can tell that this is a nice stable haze though, because this has been inside the fermenter for quite a while, and this is the haze that it just left with it. So nice, good, stable haze, which could be coming from pectin, it could be coming from the proteins inside the oatmeal that we added, or it could be coming from all the spice contribution that we had. A lot of the spices can contribute to a little bit of haze from themselves. So it could be lots of areas where this haze is coming from. But it doesn't necessarily detract from the overall appearance of the cider. It's a nice, beautiful looking cider. The carbonation level is appropriate. It is a nice petulant carbonation level. So I would say I made it to carbonate at 2.25 atmospheres of pressure. And that's what the final result looks like after a few, like a month or so of sitting around carbonating. All right, let's go ahead and give it an aroma evaluation. Ooh, that's really nice. Right off the bat, it's really pleasant apple pie spice. I can immediately pick out the cinnamon and ginger. That is like the two kind of predominant spices that are there. Nutmeg, not really terribly apparent. I do know it's in there because I made the spice syrup myself. Also, not really getting much of the allspice aroma-wise, but yeah, it might have a presence in the taste. So let's go give it a taste. Let's go start with our short sip. Ooh, my goodness. Ooh, that's so right away you get nice, good, warm apple flavor. This is obviously cold, but that ginger there and cinnamon is acting to act like a warming spice sensation. So you're getting these nice, good, bold warming spices combined there with that nice, real smooth richness that the vanilla added to it. It is impeccably well balanced on the flavor profile on the short sip. It comes in slightly more tart than you would expect for a traditional New World style cider, but the tartness is really well tempered by that smooth vanilla note that we have there and all those nice warming spices to go along with it. And the sweetness, I would have to say, is actually really appropriate to this. This is like an apple pie in a glass off the short sip. Let's make it a little bit of a longer sip. So in the longer sip, that nice sweet kind of, if you let it sit in your palate a little bit more, there is a little bit of a bitter back end. That most likely is from all that contribution of tannins from the spices. They do actually contribute pretty well to the tannin profile of this. It lingers. The flavor really lingers. And it doesn't linger in an unpleasant way. It's not outstaying its welcome. It's a nice, sweet, tart, lingering the flavor there, which kind of coats the middle back of your palate. It's really quite pleasant. It is more apple pie than I would say apple pie a la mode, which is my only critique here. Is it creamy? Yeah, the vanilla adds a little bit of creaminess to it. I will say that. I'm not sure what the oatmeal is adding here except for head retention. That might be something to address in the future. before I get any comments on this, no, I'm not going to use lactose on this. I don't want to use lactose. This is not my direction for this cider. As somebody who's lactose intolerant, I don't want to be in the bathroom all night. So the kind of the overall impression I'm getting is that this is more of an apple pie cider than an apple pie a la mode cider. But that vanilla kind of really tempers things off, which makes it kind of skirt into the realm of apple pie a la mode. So I would say that kind of it gets towards the mark. But I will tell you, the thing that is really being the star of this show is that vanilla and the ginger, as well as that kind of cinnamon. All three of those playing together with that nice, really rich baked apple flavor. All those are really playing very nice together. So yeah, it is very well balanced. I'm not particularly getting anything off about it. And my only critique would be a small amount of bitterness. So let's go ahead and do our evaluation. All right, from our cider score sheet, we are definitely getting acidic. We are definitely getting fruity. We're getting sweet as well. So the appearance, the main note is the clarity is a little bit off. So I'm going to give it a mark off for clarity. So I'm going to give this a 5 out of 6 for clarity. Aroma and bouquet, it is popping with spice, but it is not overwhelming, which is the important thing to note about these type of ciders. Like if you are doing a spice cider, you want the spices to corroborate the experience of the apples. You don't want them to take over the apples. So you never want to be tasting the thing without itself, without the apple being there, it's nice in a harmony and balance. So I would say the aroma is a solid 10 out of 10. This is a really good smelling cider. If you love spiced apple cider, this is really good. Flavor. So very good balance of carbonation, sweetness, acidity, and alcohol strength. Of course, I haven't talked about alcohol strength because there is no noticeable alcohol in this. What you're getting is cinnamon, you're getting ginger, you're getting vanilla. Not really getting nutmeg or allspice, which is slightly frustrating for the nutmeg in particular. I really like to have a good bit of nutmeg in my apple pie. So, but that being said, if I were to be sending this in for competition, which I'm not going to send this one in this year because this was a recipe under development, if I send this in next year, I would just eke up that nutmeg content just a little bit. However much I added, I would add in maybe 50% more nutmeg, just to kind of make it more balanced out with the rest of this. Otherwise, this is a really well-balanced cider. I am going to mark it off a point for the aftertaste. I don't think that the aftertaste is particularly great. So I'm going to give it a... Sorry, I don't mean to say it's very critical. The aftertaste is really good, but that small bitterness, I can see how it could be distracting to certain people. So I'm going to give it a point marked off. 23. An overall impression, with the exception of that back end aftertaste, I am going to give this a 9 out of 10. This is very good, which would lead us to a total of 32, plus 10 is 42, plus 5 is 47, which would give us, in my old scoring system, a 9.4 out of 10. This is a wonderful cider. It is so approachable and easy to do. The hard part about this cider is getting the spices. Everything else is really easy to do. You can make down your own apples. You can bake your own apples. You can add in you can also do your own cooking down of your apple juice in order to make that more concentrated, syrupy apple juice. The only kind of really difficult thing to do here is making the spices blend. And that is, well, I've showed you the process for doing that here. So go make this. If you love spice cider, go make this. You will enjoy this. This is very approachable. Anyway, that's going to be it for today's video. I really enjoyed this one, and I hope you enjoyed it too. If you have any comments about the process here, or you have any questions, go ahead and leave them down below. I'll be happy to hear from you. Cheers. Happy cidering.